Hello, hello, hello. My name is Sonny. I'm one of the organizers. I'm going to turn it over to the awesome organizers who brought us here today, the main organizers. They will introduce themselves and we're going to get started. Thank you guys for being here.
Hello, everyone. I am Cody Cross. Thank you so much for coming today. I can't tell you how much that means to me. You know, this isn't as polarizing of an issue as some people make it out to be. If you look into the crowd, we all come from a different background, a different walk of life, and we can all come together and demand an end to gun violence, to say as a people, enough is enough. And it really is telling. I'm in awe. I'm awestruck. So thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Here's my other co-organizer.
I'm short. Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam Rosser. I've spent the past few years dedicating my time to making the community safer and working with people to try and get word out there that we need a change. And it's a lot more than just sharing and thoughts and prayers online. You have to actually be out here and do something. And that's why we're here today, to do something and to celebrate the lives that we have lost due to gun violence and overall be here for each other as a community. So thank you so much for coming out. We really appreciate it and we're very grateful. To start off this event, I will begin with the Black National Anthem. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the clearest skies. Let us resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Thank you. I would like to speak for a second about Nakia Crawford. She was a great friend of mine. We met each other in 4th grade, and from that moment on, I knew she was going to be somebody who I would have as a lifelong friend. She was somebody who genuinely cared about others and put others before herself, and unfortunately was also one of those kind of people like me who didn't feel like they should ask for help when they need it because they were too busy caring about other people. And sometimes with those kinds of people, we have to sit them down and be like, hey, let's talk. Nakia graduated with me in class of 2020 at North High School, and 2 weeks after, she was murdered in a case of mistaken identity. And I could only hope that that person realizes that a case of mistaken identity turned into something where that person not only took another life, but lost their identity themselves in that process. Nakia was somebody who loved to debate. Her and I would spend forever in history class, making funny looks at people who seemed to have an opinion we didn't agree with, but we would always come to terms with opinions are opinions, and we can judge, but we can't hold other people's opinions against them because they have their reasons that they believe it and we have ours. And she was somebody who I will always miss, and I will never take for granted our friendship, and somebody who is my main reason for fighting against gun violence. She was somebody who was taken too soon. Thank you. And now introducing our other co-organizer, Sonny Matthews.
All right. So one of the reasons we're gathered here today is to speak about gun violence. One of the reasons we're gathered here today is to talk about kitchen table issues, including gun violence. When you're sitting at your kitchen table, those issues that sit on your heart, what do you worry about? What do you care about? At the end of a long, hard day, when you sit down for that late night drink, whatever it may be, what are you thinking about? The bills you are struggling to pay, the violence in our Akron community, the latest mass shooting you read about on Facebook, that George Floyd got his day in court when so many others didn't, that the kids need something, that your kids need something, and how are you going to get it? Are you thinking about that medical expense? Are you deciding whether or not you've eaten or paying for that prescription? Are you thinking about you working all these long and hard hours and you still live paycheck to paycheck? Yo, this is kitchen table issues. Gun violence, gun reform, poverty. These are kitchen table issues. I'm here to tell you that there are solutions. We as a community, we own those solutions. We need to join together and fight for each other. We've got to realize the collective power lies with us. We will change our society. We will get gun reform. We will make sure that Black Lives Matter. We will do all of this because we are not powerless. We are powerful. Say it with me. We are powerful. Say it with me. We are powerful. We are not powerless. Say it with me. We are powerful. We are not powerless. We are the electorate. We are the kitchen. I got you. We are the I'm vaccinated, so. We are the kitchen table voters. All of the questions that I just rattled off, all of the questions that keep you up at night, yo, those are kitchen table issues. Our kitchen tables are the issues that directly affect us. And there are people who can directly solve those problems. They are our community members, but they are our legislators. We have the power to determine who we trust to handle these big and scary kitchen table issues, including gun reform, because we are not powerless. We are powerful. When I say we are not powerless, say it with me. We are powerful. When I say we are not powerless, we are powerful. We are not powerless, we are powerful. Democracy is not a spectator sport. You cannot sit passively by as folks legislate your life, your body, and your law, the laws that directly impact your life in a negative way. The Stand Your Ground law, think about it. That is not a positive law. It is not going to have a positive effect. We are not powerless. We are powerful. We are not powerless. What are we? Powerful. We have to recognize our power. The proof is in the pudding. The Floyd verdict proved that. Who helped that come about? The witnesses, the young lady who recorded it, and the marchers. Yo, we are not powerless. What are we? Powerful. So I urge you to show up and show out. Make sure all your elected local folks know, your statewide folks, your national leaders know. Make sure they know that where you stand and where you want them to stand. Make sure they know you want gun control now. Make sure that you know that they know that you are not powerless. You are We are kitchen table voters. We are the community. We need to show up. We need to attend all of the meetings. We need to show up for all the rallies and the marches. We need to make sure we vote. We need to make sure we know how they voted on that bill. Because if they don't listen to us who hold the power, because we are not powerless, we are powerful, then we will vote them out. If they don't give us what we are asking for, we will vote them out. Us kitchen table voters, y'all, we're the electorate. And here in the United States of America, we are the people. We can change. It's about accountability. It's about transparency. It's about reformative justice and equality. We know our power because we are not powerless. We are powerful. We are the community. We are the electorate. We are the kitchen table voters. We can bring about change directed at social and systemic issues surrounding poverty, lack of opportunities, education, and violence of all kinds, including statehood violence. Today we stand together. If you are not registered to vote, get registered. Show up and show out in every election, including the local ones. Show up for the meetings. Attend your city council meetings. Watch what they're doing when they legislate. Listen to the god-awful people who are now voting on your behalf. And make sure you know where they stand on every issue, including, mostly, gun reform. Join social groups like Crooked River Action, Moms Demand Action. We thank these groups for being sponsors here. Come holler at me. Dimensions of Ism, let's talk. Because we matter. Kitchen table voters, y'all, we matter. They need to fear our vote because we are not powerless. We are powerful. They need to earn our support because we are not powerless. We are powerful. Because you will see us show up and show out because we are not powerless. We are powerful. We are the community. We are not powerless. We are powerful. We are the mighty and powerful electorate. We are not powerless. We are powerful. We are kitchen table voters. And we are not powerless. We are powerful.
Woo! If you don't feel it after that, I don't know what y'all gonna do. Next up is Councilwoman from Ward 5, Tara Mosley Samples. She is an advocate for gun reform. She has been advocating for an outspoken advocate for those suffering from addiction, for the homeless, and for those with mental health issues. She has passed several pieces of legislation, including fire safety and allowing the Akron City Council to live stream on social media. She is a leader of the people, a champion for the city of Akron. Thank you, Councilwoman Tara Samples.
Thank you, Cody. I'm going to take Cody on the road with me. I have the distinct honor of introducing our next Congresswoman, Nina Turner. Before I do that, I want you all to keep this in mind and remember this. Justice is only justice when we have reform. Justice is only justice when we have reform. Fort Wayne, St. Louis, Chicago, New Orleans, Rochester, Detroit, Wilmington, Chicago, Denver, Detroit, Springfield, Detroit, Memphis, Milwaukee, New York, Brooklyn. That's only the first page of what has happened in the last 48 hours in this country as it relates to gun violence. Again, justice is only justice when there is reform attached to it. Remember that. And without further ado, I give you all your next Congresswoman, Nina Turner.
Wow. Thank you, Council Lady. I appreciate that very much. And to everybody here, I'll hold this a little bit. To all the organizers of March for Our Lives, thank you for your vision. And the young shall lead them. Thank you for your vision for standing up and affirming very clearly the type of nation that you expect to live in. When Sister Sonny was talking about the Stand Your Ground law that passed in the Ohio legislature, a legislature that I served in, and I could not believe that after all that we have seen and all that we know, especially with what happened to Trayvon Martin, that in the state that we live in, that they would have the pure and unadulterated gall to not only introduce but pass and to have that bill signed by the governor of this state, even after all that we know. It tells me very clearly that there is something wrong in the great state of Ohio, but all that is wrong with this state, baby, we can make it right. Hello, somebody. We the people can make it right. So to the organizers of this event, I thank you, and the young shall lead them. The young gunners, maybe I shouldn't call them young gunners, we're talking about gun violence, forgive me. The young folks, we got to stop saying some of those things we've said in the past, the young folks. So Cody Cross, quoting him, the goal for Saturday is to take a stand against gun violence, violence in all of its forms, really, and to demand gun reform, and really to send a message that we the people say enough is enough. It reminds me of what the great activist and civil rights organizer Fannie Lou Hamer once said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Go ahead on Cody, lay that out. We got Sonny, who we just heard from. She said the march is about participants coming together to share their collective pain. Their collective pain, and to explore and demand solutions together. It's a chance for us to acknowledge how heavy it is to be in America right now, but how change can come. It's an opportunity for us to lift that heavy. So I want to talk to you this afternoon about how we lift the heavy. Is that all right? Part of the way that we lift the heavy is to make sure that we are actively engaged and involved at all times. Lifting the heavy means that we hold ourselves accountable and we hold those who we elect accountable. Hello, somebody. It's time out for elected officials kowtower to the gun lobby. Hello, somebody. Even as I was a member of the General Assembly and they would come and try to boss folks around. And then we know what they do on the federal level. It is absolutely untenable. It is a sin and a shame. It is a stain on this nation that we would allow any group to have the type of power that we have allowed the gun lobby to have in the United States of America. The blood is on their hands. And we got to do something about it. So yeah, we need to close the gun show loopholes. We know all the things that we are supposed to do. But what Sister Turner is talking about today is not just what we need to do in public policy. It is what we need to do in our hearts. Hello, somebody. There is something wrong. And we need to lift the heavy. The heaviness about what just happened in Columbus. The heaviness in terms of the sad justice that we witnessed in Minnesota. The heaviness that what happened in Cleveland on a playground to a 12-year-old little boy. The heaviness that we are so obsessed with guns as some folks think the Second Amendment is absolute over everything else. Hello, somebody. Something wrong. So we can lift the heavy by making a demand to people that we put in office who act in our name. We need to make a demand that we are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and that we are not going to take it anymore, that we absolutely do not equivocate when it comes to gun violence and creating the public policies that are necessary to ameliorate this challenge in the United States of America. That is on one end. On the other end, sisters and brothers, we have an obligation one to another, not to show indifference to this matter. You know, I was just glancing over an article this morning that my campaign manager gave me, and the author of this article was really talking about police violence. We got to deal with police violence on one hand, and then we got to deal with the other types of violences that happen in our community every single day. But what this author lays out is that there's a type of indifference that people just really don't give a and fill in the blank. Baby's here, I'm trying to keep it PG. People have to care. This is about what is in our hearts. And so the conscious-minded people of this city, of this district, of this state, and this nation must continue to come together and make a demand. Yeah, we are making a demand, and that is what I love about the organizers of March for Our Lives. Our lives matter socially. Our lives matter politically. Our lives matter racially. Our lives matter economically. And that should permeate through public policy in all of its forms. And so we can no longer stand idly by and let elected officials who hold the people's power do whatever it is they think they want to do. They need to stop answering to their owner donors and answer to the people. We over it. Babies dying and they too afraid. Sandy Hook, I thought that was going to be the turning point. Hello, somebody. Even that wasn't enough. We need folks who have intestinal fortitude. And if they don't have it, then they got to go. We are not going to fall so in love with politicians that we, the people, are not willing to stand up and make a demand. Part of the demand is that gun violence is a scourge on the United States of America, and we all have an obligation to do something about it, especially the people we elect to office. Stop playing with it. We need to invest more resources in our community. As one of the hegemon nation on the face of the earth, it's really funny to me, puzzling to me, how we can increase the budget of the military-industrial complex, but when we talk about putting more money in education, more money in healthcare, more money in communities, putting people to work, there's always some kind of excuse about what cannot be done. I submit to you, in the words of President Nelson Mandela, that it always seems impossible until it is done. Sisters and brothers, I do believe that we can create the type of community, the type of nation where gun violence happens rarely. Hello, somebody. But the only way we're going to get to that is we got to put some sweat equity on this thing. We got to challenge folks, because it is not going to happen just because we hope for it to happen. It is going to happen because of conscious-minded people from all walks of life putting a little extra on their ordinary so that extraordinary things can happen. It can happen, sisters and brothers. We are marching for our lives today and the lives of generations yet unborn. Hello, somebody. So I don't want you to get weary and well-doing. So let me close with this. Again, to our young people who are leading the way on this, we salute you. We need every generation to lock arm in arm, everybody from every single identity. We are going to identify with the right thing. And the right thing is for us not to accept excuses when it comes to gun violence. There's always, always, always something that can be done. We can do it. So these are the words I want to leave with you. I'm feeling grandma this morning. Is that all right? Or this afternoon? Is that all right? And I want to talk to you about my grandmother's 3 bones. Many of you remember me telling this story. I got to leave this with you. The wishbone, the jawbone, and the backbone. Grandma said the wishbone is for hoping and praying, because hope is the motivator, but the dream is the driver. We hope, we pray, we wish, and we're going to put some sweat equity on all of that. In the Christian tradition of which I come from, it says faith without works is dead. We're going to work on this thing. That's why we're marching for our lives. Number 2, the jawbone. She said the jawbone will give you the courage to speak truth to power, to lift your voice. You see, titles are good, but purpose is better. And we got more purpose-driven people who are locking arm in arm all over this country to make the damn demand. And we demand that elected officials stand up for the people. My sister got disarmed, the NRA, baby. That's what we talking about. Hello, somebody. Do that. Jawbone. But the most important bone of them all, the supercalifragilistic expialidocious bone, is the backbone. Because the backbone will give us the courage that we need to keep standing no matter what it looks like. We must stand anyhow. All great social and political change in this nation has come because people decided to stand up against the odds. We are in a moment right now where we must undo the heavy and stand up against the odds. That is what March for Our Lives is all about. We are standing up against the odds. We are the majority. So we're going to take our wishbone, our jawbone, and our backbone. Sisters and brothers, we can't have a testimony without a test. And we are being tested to determine whether we got fortitude or not, have courage enough, have conviction enough to do what is right in our time for ourselves and for generations that are depending on us to make the demand, to continue to stand, to undo the heavy, and to march for our lives. And I am marching right with you. Thank you so much, sisters and brothers.
That's tough to follow. That's so tough to follow. I have the honor of introducing my brother from another mother, Cody Cross. Cody was born and raised in Akron, Ohio. He planned to and spoke at the walkout at his school after the shooting in Park Road with his classmates in solidarity with the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas students, as well as students across the nation. He continues to facilitate a relationship with the Akron School Board, at which time he helped form the student school board. He was invited to participate in the WKYC social media student gun violence program, where he discussed with several other high school students about gun violence.
Can you tell me real quickly the question?
Just about the. He's going to
Okay, okay.
You going to take the lead on this? Yeah, I got it. All right.
Hang on, I got to go in front of you. 1 minute. There we go. Get a little closer.
Am I just looking at the one?
Yeah.
That good? Okay. Okay.
So, first of all, you're running for Congress.
Yes.
And what makes this so important to talk about right now?
Yeah. I mean, I really salute the organizers of March for Our Lives. This is important. The scourge of gun violence in this country is untenable. It has been that way for a very long time. I certainly believe that the pandemic has exacerbated, feelings and stressors. What we're seeing also on the policing side of things, the shooting that just happened to the 16-year-old girl in Columbus. We're dealing with the aftermath of the Chauvin case, and even though I believe justice was served, it was a sad kind of justice. So there's a lot of heaviness that is permeating not just this state, but the entire nation when it comes to gun violence, and we have to stand up and do something about it. We need policymakers to do something about it, and then we need individuals to be in this so that as individuals and collectively we can turn this thing around. Stand your ground law, yes.
It's backwards. Okay? It's just a backwards idea to me. Anybody else.
No, it is backwards.
It makes no sense, especially when we know what already happened.
That's right. It shows an indifference to life.
Yeah.
And again, treating the Second Amendment as if it is an absolute not caring about what happens when people stand their ground and the emotions that take place when folks are just walking around thinking that they can just shoot people and deal with it on the back end. I am ashamed of the state of Ohio, and had I been in the legislature at the time that it was going through, not only would I have voted against that bill, I would have organized against that bill as well. And I'm really disappointed in Governor DeWine because he should have vetoed that bill. I'm disappointed in my Republican sisters and brothers knowing all that they know. It's not like they don't know what stand your ground bills have done across this country. They knew that. And still, in the face of all of the carnage, they not only introduced that bill, passed it through the legislature, but we have a governor who signed that bill.
So where do we go from here? Where do we, as far as voters, we know what voters can do. But it seems like no matter if we vote or not, we still have the same ignorance going on.
You know, it matters. It definitely matters when it comes to public policy. And so people have to get out there and organize earlier, do more, do what March for Our Lives are doing. We got to do that on a regular basis. People can't give up because it does seem at moments that this fight is so that we're not going to win, but we are going to absolutely win. So people have to organize, and they have to vote, and they have to organize, and they have to vote, and they have to organize, and they have to vote. It never stops until we put the type of people in legislatures that care about life, and that we put the type of people who are not afraid to stand up to the gun lobby in that Congress. And it is going to be the combination. I wish I could say it was just one of those things. It's going to be a multifaceted battle to deal with gun violence in the United States of America. It must be consistent and it must be constant.
The fact that we even have to argue about somebody having a universal background check.
Or closing the gun show loophole.
I don't understand what really happened.
Right, it just, again, it makes no sense, and it is just this preoccupation with guns that permeates our culture. And so, yes, public policy will go a long way, but we got to get to the matters of the heart and have real conversations about what gun violence does to destroy communities. You know, I had a family member who shot and killed his father and shot my aunt. His father was sitting in his favorite chair after work, watching TV, and his son comes in there and shoots him and kills him, and then goes on the hunt inside the house for my aunt. My aunt lived, but my uncle died. This family member has a mental health problem. How in the hell did he get a gun in the first place? So from lived experience, I understand what the scourge of gun violence can do. So on the one hand, we got to deal with gun violence. We got to deal with the proliferation of guns. We got to deal with how people who have mental health challenges get guns. And also, let me say this. We're not going to put all this just on people who have mental health challenges too, because a whole bunch of people walking around here who don't have a mental health challenge and they have their hands on guns. We got to deal with the NRA thinking that they are God and how they control elected officials and what they decide to do and not do when it comes to public policy. And that is why I say there's a policy remedy and then there's a communal remedy too. And all of those things have to converge together to change this. We cannot continue this course with the scourge of gun violence in the United States of America.
I have a question for you. What would you say to the people who own guns and just dismiss this right out the bat as everybody's coming to take them away for good?
That's not true. We need them. We need gun owners, people who legally own guns. We need them to take a stand against the scourge of gun violence. These two things are not mutually exclusive. We need responsible gun owners to stand side by side with other people in this community and help us do something about. Let's go ahead and close the loopholes. Why do we need military-style weapons on the streets? There should be some common sense gun reform that even legal gun owners can agree with and join us in the streets. They should be here with March for Our Lives. And there may be some, legal gun owners right now, side by side. We got to do this thing together. It's not an either or. We can do this together. Nobody's coming to take their guns. If you are a responsible gun owner, good for you. Use some of that responsibility and come and help us do something about the scourge of gun violence. We need all hands on deck. We're good. Okay.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? If you have anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. My name is on the releases, and Marissa May has my contact info on the releases as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
and unjust law enforcement targeting communities of color. We must examine the ways that we police our communities to ensure that lives are valued equally, to ensure that Black lives matter. In the aftermath of Chauvin, or as I call him, George Floyd's murderer's verdict, we got accountability, not justice. There is a difference. We won't see justice until we reform our policing to ensure that everyone is treated fairly. And in the wake of nationwide media coverage of mass shootings, Chauvin's trial, and multiple innocent Black and brown lives being taken across the nation, Republicans elected from the state of Ohio, from across the state of Ohio, have passed a Stand Your Ground bill. The law that in 2012 allowed Trayvon Martin's murderer to be acquitted of murdering him. This racist law has made its way to Ohio. It basically allows an individual who owns a firearm legally, which is incredibly easy in Ohio, to shoot someone immediately to defend themselves. There is no duty to retreat. If they feel threatened, they are able to shoot. And as we know, Black and brown bodies are often seen as threats simply for existing. This will allow racists to kill people of color they identify as threats and potentially get away with it. Not only does this make Ohio more dangerous in general, but it also has gone into effect as Asian Americans are increasingly being targeted by hate crime, and hate crime in general is on the rise. This is yet another example of not only our elected officials not acting in our best interest, but instead acting against our best interest. So today, we're marching for our lives, the lives of future generations, the lives of marginalized communities. We are marching for Ma'Khia Bryant. We are marching for Adam Toledo. We are marching for George Floyd. We must continue to demand a change, continue to hold our elected officials accountable, and continue to say, enough is enough. Say it with me one more time. Enough is enough. Thank you. Next up, I have the pleasure of introducing Heidi Barnum from God Before Guns. Reverend Heidi Barnum currently serves as Vice President of the Board of Directors of God Before Guns, which is a multi-faith coalition of individuals and faith-based communities working to reduce gun violence and injuries. Heidi.
Good afternoon. I am vaccinated. In the days leading up to today's March for Our Lives event, I thought about what I might say. And as each day went by and I heard about yet another mass shooting, all I could think was, enough already. Can't something be done to stop all this senseless killing? Why can't our elected officials pull together and do something to stop making it so easy for this to keep happening? Hasn't this been going on long enough? Haven't enough people died and been injured already? We would have thought what happened at Sandy Hook Elementary School would have been enough. I mean, who wouldn't be moved by the senseless death of 20, 6, and 7-year-olds in a place like Newtown, Connecticut? It moved Reverend Chris and David Eggert to start God Before Guns. But Sandy Hook was not enough for our legislators to act. We might have thought Parkland, Florida would have been enough. After all, 14 high school students dying at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School should have been the tipping point, right? It spurred the students to start March for Our Lives, but Parkland was not enough to compel the politicians to do anything. Then again, we might have assumed that the mass shootings at a Baptist church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, or a synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or an historical African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina would have been enough. I mean, you would think we should be safe in our houses of worship, shouldn't we? It was enough to cause the Reverend Sharon Risher, our dear friend and daughter of one of the victims at Mother Emanuel AME Church, to become what she calls an accidental activist. But even that was not enough to activate the hearts and consciences of those elected officials. And here we are, roughly a third of the way through 2021, in the wake of a global pandemic that one would have thought would have been enough to stem the tide of gun violence. But even that was not enough to stop the madness. From Atlanta, Georgia, to Boulder, Colorado, to Indianapolis, Indiana, a little more than 100 days into the year, and there have already been more than 150 recorded mass shootings, according to the Gun Violence Archive. That's more mass shootings than during the same period in 2018, 2019, and 2020. And if the statistics from the previous years are any indication, the numbers are only going to get worse. So just when will enough be enough? When will enough people have become the victims of gun violence to spur our elected officials to take serious action and start working together toward passing common sense gun laws? I must admit, at one point, I thought if the gun violence began directly affecting elected officials, surely that would be enough. But Congresswoman Gabby Giffords and Senator Steve Scalise became prime examples that even when the violence struck in their own front yard, even when both a Democratic and a Republican colleague fell victim to gun violence, proving that gun violence crosses party lines, even that was not enough for them to act. So it should have come as no surprise that the insurrection of January 6th, which resulted in the death of 5 people on the grounds of the Capitol building, even that was not enough. And so if certain politicians continue to put their personal agenda ahead of the lives of the persons they have been elected to serve, as well as the lives of those whom they have been elected to serve alongside, then it is time for us to start firing off ballots as our response to the bullets. It is time for us to let those elected officials know that enough is enough. We've had more than enough platitudes, more than enough thoughts and prayers, and more than enough excuses about why now is still just not the right time to talk about gun reform. So to all those gentlemen and gentlewomen who have been voted into local, state, and national offices, we have come here today to put you on notice that enough is enough. And we have come to let you know that it is past time for you to start doing the job that you were actually elected to do. Now, the scriptures tell us that the love of money is the root of all evil. And it is past time for you to realize that mothers and minorities matter more than money, and fathers and families are to be favored over funding. And you need to know that our children and our communities are to be cherished. They are not commodities that can simply be traded for currency. Right. And until you can truly understand and appreciate that, dear sirs and dear madams, consider this your official warning: enough is enough. You have let it be known by your words and your actions, or should I say your inactions, that what you really prefer is profits over people. And that has gone on long enough. So please be advised, change is on the horizon. A new day is dawning, and business as usual will not be tolerated. You are hereby being placed on an official corrective action. And should you fail to start making the necessary performance improvements immediately, we will have no other alternative than to terminate your relationship with our community, effective on or before the next general election. Make no mistake, you may be more concerned about taking away our ballots than you are about stopping the bullets. But we will continue to march for our lives, from the State House to the White House and even to the courthouse and every place in between. So you will know beyond a shadow of a doubt, the time has come for you to act, because enough is enough. Thank you. Next up, we have a good friend of mine, Councilman Shamus
Akron City Councilman for Ward 8, representing Northwest Akron, where he was born and raised. Elected in 2019, he is passionate about building a stronger and more equitable community in Akron, focused on inclusive economic growth and reimagining our approaches to public safety. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Cody. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I don't like to have to follow Senator Nina Turner. Usually when someone follows Senator Turner, it's Senator Sanders, so we'll see how it goes. But when I was thinking about what I should say here today, I was thinking that so many of the conversations that we have these days come down to safety, right? Because everyone deserves to feel safe. Everyone deserves to be safe, whoever they are. If you're a person sitting in your home, if you're walking down the street, if you're an 18-year-old high school graduate stopped at the car at the corner of Howard Street, right? If you're a Jewish person in a synagogue, if you're a Muslim person in a mosque, if you're a bunch of Christians in the basement of a church for Bible study, you deserve to be safe. But across our communities, so many people are not safe. We see the terrible amount of gun violence here in Akron that predominantly falls on our black community. We see school shootings all across the country. We see mass shootings that are now happening again because the lockdown is over. That was one of our silver linings of COVID. It's so tragic. But what that comes down to is that we all have to dig down and understand our common humanity, right? Because we all have different lived experiences. We all come from different places. We all have different walks of life. We eat different things. But we all deserve some basic things. We deserve to feel safe. We deserve a roof over our heads. We deserve health care, good education. But when we recognize the value in other people, when we want for others what we want for ourselves, we can begin. I hope they're okay. When we want for others what we want for ourselves, we can begin advocating and we can begin organizing and we can take that collective power that Senator Turner is talking about, that Sonny is talking about, and we can turn it into action. Now, I haven't been on city council for that long. It's been 16 months. I picked a bad time to get involved. But what I've seen is that government doesn't work because folks are skeptical of government. At every level of government, federal, state, and local. For decades, going back to big things like Watergate and the Iraq War, they've made people alienated from government. They don't trust government. We look at the state level and we see the amount of corruption. Representative Casey Weinstein was here. He's been working and fighting against HB 6. But we see the level of corruption at the state government. And people are frustrated with the local government when we can't get things like the roads paved, right? But that's where all of you come in. Because it's great to have marches, it's great to organize, it's great to get pumped up. But everyone also has to be here for the second step and the third step. So you have to get in my face at city council, right? Not actually, I'm not telling people to. But you have to email us, you have to call us, you have to come up to us and ask us hard questions about safety, about policing, about guns, about what we're gonna do with this $153 million that the city of Akron is getting to curb gun violence. Are we going to invest in community policing? Are we going to invest in non-police responders to 911 calls? Are we gonna invest in housing, right? What are we going to invest in? But that's up to all of you. So you guys need to call. But it comes down again to our fundamental humanity, because we're not all going to see the same way on things. But we all deserve some very basic things. And our community we are good enough to create that community. We have these amazing ideals, but the gap between those ideals and reality is so large. And the people who are going to bridge that gap are all of us. So thank you for being here. But please, please, please continue to advocate. Continue to get involved. Even when it's difficult. Government doesn't always make it easy to get involved. But try as hard as you can. Reach out to others. Reach out to people who are different from you. And together we can make a better community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Next up, we have Haley Lancaster, who is the event lead for the Akron chapter of Moms Demand Action. She got involved with Moms Demand Action after the Parkland shooting in 2018. Thank you so much, Haley, for being here.
So I'm not sure I've ever been so nervous in my life. But I'm here today because, as you've heard over and over again, 2020 was one of the most deadly years in recent history for most major cities. The COVID pandemic has worsened root causes of gun violence like income and housing inequality. And at the same time, it has strained life-saving social services. Similarly to COVID, the rise in gun violence has disproportionately affected Black and Latino communities because of longstanding inequalities. In Akron alone, the homicide rate in 2020 increased 50% compared to previous years, and calls for shots fired increased 25%. And despite these staggering numbers, we have numerous counties across the state declaring themselves as sanctuary counties. And we have people like State Rep Mike Loychik. Remember that name, Loychik. He wants to implement sanctuary status at the state level. A Second Amendment sanctuary is an area that refuses to enforce any new gun control laws passed by the state or federal government. These leaders are not protecting us, they're not doing their jobs, and they're not in line with the vast majority of voters who support common sense gun laws, like background checks on all gun sales and red flag laws. As you heard, I am a local leader of Moms Demand Action. If you haven't heard of us before, we're the grassroots arm of the gun violence prevention movement. We focus on empowering average citizens, like all of us here today, who have had enough of our government's inaction, and we encourage them to advocate for common sense gun legislation. Our organization is not just for moms either. Our supporters include students, people without children, men, teachers, gun owners, and anyone else that wants to make a change regardless of their gender, orientation, or political affiliation. I also got involved with moms after the Parkland shooting in February 2018, and I think Parkland was a turning point for many of us. Watching students around the country band together and beg adults to protect them was inspiring and completely devastating. I have 4 children, and I'm the wife of a teacher. So eventually I realized I can't just sit around and pray that my family comes home from school each day. So my anger and my fear transformed into action, and I developed a passion for common sense gun reform activism. But I'm not only here to talk about school shootings. Police violence is gun violence too, and we must fight the toxic combination of systemic racism, America's gun culture, and the militarization of law enforcement that has resulted in the tragic deaths of way too many. So I'm going to throw some numbers at you. 95% of people killed by police are killed with guns, and a staggering 99% of killings by police between 2013 and 2019 did not result in an officer being charged with a crime. On an average day, police shoot and kill 3 people and injure 6 more. Black people are the victims of police shootings at a disproportionate rate, and they're nearly 3 times as likely to be shot and killed by police than white people. Sorry. Latinxes are twice as likely to be killed in a gun homicide than white people, and they're also more likely to be fatally shot by police. And according to a recent study by Stop AAPI Hate, from last March to this February, there were more than 3,700 reported racially motivated attacks against Asian Americans, primarily fueled by racist rhetoric from the former president. And by a more than 2-to-1 margin, these attacks targeted Asian American women. Every month in the US, an average of 53 women are shot and killed by an intimate partner. And there are many reasons for this kind of misogyny and violence, but weak gun laws are a key factor in the risks that women in the US face. We've allowed tragedies like this to become part of the American way. 100 people die by gun violence each day in America. Thoughts and prayers won't bring them back, and even worse, it doesn't prevent tomorrow's 100 from being taken. This is a public health crisis that demands urgent action. If you can believe it, Congress has not passed a major federal gun safety law in more than 25 years. That long, deadly drought must end now with the Senate passing common sense, life-saving background check legislation. The American people are with us. 93% of Americans support background checks, which includes 89% of Republicans and 89% of gun owners. My organization is prioritizing background checks because we believe that they are the foundation of good life-saving gun safety policy. There's bipartisan support for the Senate passing them into law as well. But just because we're prioritizing those laws doesn't mean we're not fighting for all of them, including a prohibition on assault weapons. And we won't stop until we fundamentally transformed gun safety in America one law at a time. The president recently announced several life-saving executive actions, including to address skyrocketing city gun violence by unlocking funding for 26 existing federal grant programs for community-based violence intervention efforts, working to stop the proliferation of untraceable ghost guns that are the fastest-growing source of illegal guns in the country, and more. And he would be the first to tell you that those actions are just the beginning and not the end of federal action on gun reform. The president also called for critical federal legislative action, and the Senate is next. We're going to stop at nothing until life-saving background checks become the law of the land. We should be able to get stopped by the police without getting murdered. We should be able to go to work without being murdered. We should be able to go to school without being murdered, and we should be able to go to the grocery store without being murdered. So if you're ready to get involved today, grab your cell phone. I'm going to give you a number to text. You can text the word checks to the number 64433, and we'll connect you, and you can urge your senators to pass background checks immediately. That's the word checks to the number 64433. Thank you so much for letting me speak today.
And now I'd like to introduce Beth Ville. She's the COO and Director of Programming at the Big Love Network, Akron's only environmental health equity organization, and the founder of Wild Women Designs and Consulting. Beth began community organizing 19 years ago in a progressive home in a sea of white supremacy in Tuscarawas County. The family she made in the Pan-African Studies Department at Kent State University is what would eventually encourage her to move to Akron. After a few years running health and wellness programming at the Womb and working on Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security policy with Ohio Organizing Collaborative, she started organizing a community garden and Big Love festivals. The garden would lead to certificates and participatory and permacultural designs and starting her own food forestry business. The festival would lead to creative placemaking and need to help transform city planning. Beth's blunt honesty, dry humor, curiosity, commitment to transformative and restorative justice, hard work ethic, and a deep sense of a gate shines through all of her work. Please welcome Beth Ville.
Hello. So I am the white person in Akron that says the uncomfortable thing in the room. So I'm not here to tell minority communities how they should or should not defend themselves. I am here to talk about the underlying violence that undergoes all of the violence that we see today, and that is the white supremacist culture. In Akron, we have a very unique history. 100 years ago, Klansmen controlled our downtown, from sheriff to planning to the mayor to the school board, city council. We also have a unique history of being abolitionists. Sojourner Truth gave Ray and I a woman's speech in Akron, Ohio, and we have the legacy of John Brown to look up towards. So we are at a unique position 100 years after the Klan ran downtown for us to decide if we're going to keep doing business as usual, how the Klan set everything up, or if we're going to look to our ancestors as abolitionists. There is a difference between the violence that we see of the white supremacist culture and mass shootings from the violence that we see every day in Akron. The violence we see every day in Akron is because of generations of violence put against the black community. That violence is decided every single day downtown, from our housing policies to bringing on 50 new police officers, from Charles Hicks, who had a cop on his back shoving snow in his face in February in this very city. Right now, City Council has a chance to pass necessary legislation called Pay to Stay and source of income in order to help alleviate the state's worst eviction rate that's in the city, the 24th worst eviction rate in the country. We have the worst built properties in the state. We have some of the highest infant mortality for African Americans in the country, and our health disparities are startling. Did you know that in historically redlined districts, there is so much concrete and so little shade that it's about 10 degrees hotter in those neighborhoods? That directly affects people's medication, mental health medication. And then we wonder as a city why our crime rates rise when it's really hot out. But yet we have passive acknowledgement of it downtown. We need active acknowledgement of the violence that happens to poor and black people in this city. It is an outrage that the city thought that fracking our drinking water earlier this year would be an acceptable thing to do. Every single health disparity that we have in this city would be pronounced even worse with the runoff chemicals due to fracking. But that wasn't even in the consideration when they were going to get a little bit of money from their buddies. It is important for you to not just show up around national issues. People have been fighting police brutality in this city for generations. And it's nice that this last year, y'all became woke. But we've been waiting for you, and we need you to actively be involved in things in this actual city. So I need everybody to get out their phones. I'm not lying. I need everyone to get out your phones. Get out your phones. This phone number is to the public comment section of City Council. It is 330-375-2566. 330-375-2566. The police brutality name that happened in February, his name is Charles Hicks. And guess what? The police auditor, that it's his job to investigate these situations, can't get information from the police department. Let City Council know that Black Lives Matter. Call them and tell them this is unacceptable. Call them and tell them we need active legislation to end the eviction crisis in our city, that we have been evicting people throughout the pandemic, and that is unacceptable. Let them know that we are not going to passively sit by any longer. It is time for us to change things in our own backyards. Again, it's nice for people to come out around national issues, but this is happening at home, and it is time for a change. And we are We are not powerless. So please, watch City Council. It's every Monday night, you know, make a game out of it, right? It's every Monday night. Watch City Council. Keep up to date with what's actually going on here, because we've got a lot of problems, and it is our turn to decide the future of the city. Are we going to be Klansmen, or are we going to be abolitionists?
Hello. All right, we got a few more folks, and then we're going to wrap this up. We got some safety concerns we got to speak on.
I'm short and vaccinated. Hi, I'm Nikki Sutcliffe. I wear many hats in the community. You may have seen me with Spectrum Diversity Community Center, with DSA, with the Northeast Ohio Women's Clinic, and at marches. So I've done this a couple of times, and this beautiful gold van over here, her name is Cassandra. She's brand new and I love her. She's going to be driving alongside you all for the march today for safety. I'm going to be at the front of the march, and we have another vehicle that's going to kind of cover the middle of the march. We are going to stop at crossroads and block the crossing so that people can cross safely. We are going to be there to intervene should we have any issues with law enforcement or anybody that wants to do us harm. I also just want to talk about logistics. It is imperative, the rules of this sort of thing for the city. We must stay on the sidewalks and in the crosswalks. So do that. Let's not give APD any reason to look at us twice or crossways. So again, please stay on the sidewalks, in the crosswalks, and we will get everybody down. For the logistics of the march, what we're going to do to start is we're going to cross right here, my vehicle and the other vehicle. We're going to block, we're going to wait for the lights to turn red, and we'll get everybody across safely. We're going to continue on this side of Market Street. And where's Draven? Draven, come here, my dear friend Draven. Draven. This is Draven. Draven is a trained medic. Draven is going to be towards the front of the march. Draven, if you have questions about the path or where to go or where to be, this is the person to see. As you can tell, they've brought 50 pounds of medic equipment. So, also in my van, I will be driving with the hatchback open. I have a cooler full of ice cold water. Please use it because I don't want to have to store it when I get home. So feel free to just run up, grab a bottle of water. I have some some not iced water also because I know that's a preference. In the back of my van, there is also a black milk crate. If you have recycles, throw them in there. If you have trash, throw them in there. If you have something that you don't want to carry, throw it in there. If you get tired of walking, jump in my van. Like whatever you need, and my van can provide. Cassandra and Nikki are here for you. If there are any questions, just let me or one of the organizers know. And again, for the folks that prefer to be to the front of the march, please just look to Draven for instruction on where to go. On the sidewalks, in the crosswalks, stay safe, and thank everybody for being here, and thank you so much to the organizers.
All right, because we are not powerless, we are powerful. We march for our lives. We march for our lives. We have work to do, and that work starts in the community because we are not powerless, we are powerful. We've heard from all kinds of groups today, and we will continue to have conversation. Join us. One thing that I wanted to bring up, here's my daughter.
My name is Taylor. I don't want to practice march. Oh, you said march. I don't want to practice gun drills anymore. Let's fight. Let's march.
Let's go!
Follow Miriam.
I have to stay. Mom. Where's the whole ball?
Black lives matter.
That